What's the most violent video game you have ever played? I remember that PS2 game Manhunt generated a lot of controversy. Soldier of Fortune 2. Edit you good Joel 1987 says the online multiplayer is still going strong. Link to comment link. Such an awesome game. One of the first FPS games I played online. Full dismemberment and independent limb hitboxes blew my mind back then. Soft 2 was built using the GAL engine ISIN. I remember shooting a guy in the leg, and instead of shooting back he started hopping up and down on the good leg. Yes, the enemy AI was actually really good. Even night or day standards. Gun. You could scalp people alive. I need to play that again. That game was sick back in the day. Beating the last boss in that game was a bitch back in the day when I was a kid. I remember beating the final boss on Thanksgiving. Smelling Thanksgiving food cooking reminds me of that game now. Blade and Sorcery by far. I agree with this completely. I've played plenty of violent games. But slowly driving your dagger into a person's eye while you hold their throat, it's very different in VR. Thinking about it, yes, it's one thing to press a button to make a character crush a skull like a watermelon. But it's a whole other story when you are the one doing the deed. Besides, nothing says violent like impaling a head on a spear and doing a little rain dance with it. Really brings out the inner serial killer when people are able to stroke the hair and cheek of the person they just killed while they continue to repeatedly drive knives into their abdomen. Manhunt. Exactly my answer too, and I've played tons of violent games. It's not just shocking, it's the snuff film angle that makes the gruesome and brutal violence even worse. With the tense and oppressive atmosphere, there's gorier and nastier games, but they are always either creatures, shock value violence, or chunky gore. Most PS2 games. Manhunt is still the most brutal and violent game I've ever played, and I can't see how it can be topped without trying too hard to be edgy. Edit if I remember right. This was also the first game to use intense violence in the ESRB rating description. Got 'em. Some of those level 3 and even a few of the level 2 executions were brutal as duck. Manhunt was spookily immersive if you played it with the earpiece that most people got for playing Sock'em Online. If you were wearing the earpiece, the game piped the director's dialogue directly to your ear, and it didn't play through the TV speakers. So, you just had some drugged out pervert randomly screaming orders and criticism directly into your ear. Also, the mic produced an equivalent in-game noise if you made noise. So, you could catch the attention of a hunter and make him look for you if you were close enough and said, "Hey." This also worked against you in stressful situations, because sighing heavily or cursing to yourself could cause a nearby hunter to flip around and detect you. It was super ahead of its time. If I remember correctly, the gunplay that represented the huge leap from GTA Vice City and San Andreas actually debuted in Manhunt. GTA 3 and Vice City had atrocious weapon aiming, if you'll remember, and the snap to ability was a godsend at the time. Also, the brief bit of stealth that featured in San Andreas was basically ripped straight from Manhunt as well. I'm so surprised that no other stealth or horror game ever made use of that mechanic. The whole having the mic pick up your sound and relaying it in game is awesome. Alien Isolation does this. Besides some others already mentioned, Prototype was pretty damn violent. It's the closest we've had to a Venom game. I'm still hoping we'll get a remake spiritual sequel sometime, because I'd like to go around making mush of random NPCs. Today I learned I had no idea what Ultimate Spider-Man was. From what I remember, Prototype was received poorly by critics. When they did get around to making a sequel, they made Alex Mercer the villain in the second game. And I remember the developers talking about how it will be cathartic to kill him because they knew people hated him so much. Personally, I loved playing as Alex Mercer, and Prototype was easily a top 5 game for me in the 360 era. I actually really liked Alex Mercer as a main character. It was definitely a unique experience to play as a guy who is definitely the villain, but doesn't realize it right away. The whole being an actual good guy in the second game, then still just running around murdering everything, kinda put me off. Karmageddon. Karmageddon was awesome. Besides killing everyone on a level, you could also win by wrecking all of the other cars. or winning the race by clearing all the checkpoints first. Some of the maps were huge, and you could explore anywhere. Was endless fun. You can download the original game as an app for your phone. For those who remember Thrill Kill on PS1, I think it was really violent. Thrill Kill was hard to come by as I remember. They never officially released the game, so you had to know someone who could give you a copy. Lee Carvalho's pudding challenge. Postal, pissing on someone while suffering from gonorrhea, causing them to puke. Then samurai sawed their head off and watch the buff come out their necks. Good times for 13-year-old me. Or soak them in gasoline, set them on fire first, then piss gonorrhea to put out the fire, and finish the job using that rifle with the cat you use as silencer. Rise of the Triad, I guess. Or Karmageddon. Like you could say more modern games are more violent due to better graphics. I haven't played a Mortal Kombat since 1. Roller Coaster Tycoon. So many angry customers picked up and drowned. Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 has an honorable mention, just because the game will let you open any water slide as long as the dummy makes it to a pool. Even if it gets launched 500 feet away and lands in a 1x1 pool, which many of the customers will miss. I want to get off Mr. Bones' wild ride. Soldier of Fortune 1 and 2. Probably Dead Space. Those babies in the second one was super dark. Mortal Kombat. There's more violent games out there, but none of them can lay claim to leading to the creation of ratings for video games like MK can. Mad World. Rimworld. Battlefield riddled with rotting corpses. Human leather hats being made. Organs being donated to the stockpile. Multitudes of killing rooms from furnaces to machine guns. The turtle who took the eye of my favorite colonist who was promptly turned to turtle bisque. Back in high school my friend showed me a very violent PC game. I think it was called Postal, or something like that. It wasn't as graphic or gory as some games, but it stood out in my mind, because the violence seemed to be the only objective. I wasn't killing aliens, or fighting some enemy army. I was breaking into houses and robbing people, pointless killing and assaults and such. It may have only been a demo, but I don't remember getting too far into the game. RDR2. If you play it right, it's scary how much lifelike these NPCs are. Like in Tav I'm a psycho, but in RDR2 it's just ducking sad when you see someone getting killed. I've always noticed it's the games that aren't supposed to be violent that bring out the psychopath in us as gamers. For instance The Sims. Not the violent game, but when you start taking pool ladders out and forcing your Sims to grill indoors. All to watch them pace around frantically begging for help before slowly dying. That's some hardcore nature shit. Gears of War probably isn't the most violent, but 11-year-old me remembers seeing a chainsaw attached to a gun hacking an alien to death, and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. Manhunt was pretty gratuitous. I remember being a bit taken aback. Doom Eternal. There's nothing in that game that isn't violent. Picking up the toys is sometimes very wholesome. Probably the old school Punisher game. Nice try, Mom. My mom told us when we were really young that we weren't allowed to have video games due to the violence. Then at one point we were suddenly given Game Boys for Christmas with Killer Instinct included. I just wanted Mario, and she surprisingly didn't care. Turned out the whole violence thing was an excuse, so she didn't have to tell us we were too poor to get them before. And her position morphed into the more rational, well, if you can pull together the $400 for a console, game, and RF switch, we'll go right down to Walmart and get an N64, but until then you're out of luck. In a scheme to turn disposable cameras into handheld shockers and sell them. This was the 90s. I managed to get most of the money together really quick and did get my N64, and my grades dropped consistently from that point on. So what you're saying is video games caused you to manufacture and distribute weapons to children. Spec Ops the Line. This one quite ducked me up when I got through it. Like, not its visuals or gameplay, but the thing that this game do with you pretty violent. If you ask me, I think people are mistaking violent with gory. This game was exceptionally violent because nothing prepares you for the emotional aftermath of your actions. I mean, it's a third-person shooter that reminds you that you are responsible for the lives and deaths of others, both good and bad. It's ducking brilliant, and to be honest, is probably one of the most thoughtfully violent games ever invented. Stellaris. You can enact untold horrors across the galaxy, killing, enslaving, and torturing billions. The level of cosmic horror that game is willing to do is amazing and terrifying. The Darkness 2. Gone. Not Gorf. Gone. Plague Incorporated killed 7 billion people a dozen times over. No regrets about it. Hatred. State of emergency. Just emptying clips into mall shoppers. Postal 2. Mutant League Football. The game deviates from usual football simulations in several ways. Most notably, it takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where radiation has caused the human race to mutate and the dead to rise from the grave. The game instruction manual states that the exact causes of the upheaval have been lost or corrupted due to, among many things, the chaos of an alien invasion, spin control, a sloppy filing system set up by a temp, and what appears to be barbecue sauce, landmines, fire pits, and other hazards such as areas being open to empty space litter the field, which can be made of rock, ice, or even toxic waste or rubber, and players can lose health or die during the run of play, upon which they will fumble. Teams have special nasty audibles, which are dirty, not to mention excessively violent tricks such as exploding balls, invisibility, electric shocks, jetpacks, or jumping the other quarterback with intent to kill, that lead to big gains and or horrific casualties. Killing enough players causes an opposing team to forfeit. The Sims. 100% between taking out the pool ladder when a hated sim was swimming, or stacking oriental rugs near a fireplace and then removing the door to the room once it went on fire. That game lets you do things that are sadistic as duck. If Hotline Miami 1 or 2 came out in the 90s in line with its retro graphics, it would have shut down the video game industry. Edit. By the way, these are must-play games and have the best soundtracks in gaming history too. Edit 2. To me, it was best ever. I get it's subjective and many people find other soundtracks better. Both soundtracks are certainly listed here in video gaming history though. Twisted Metal. Postal 2. The thing is, you don't strictly have to kill or hurt anybody. It's the challenge, but it's totally possible to get through most of the game without hurting anybody who isn't attacking you. Sure, you can piss on people, burn them alive, use capture silencer for your gun, play fetch with your dog using a severed head, and go on killing sprees. But it's the player that is in charge of whether they do that or not. Chess Online. Well, you can't flip over a table if it's online. Be honest, how many computers and laptops have you broken from one of those? When I first got started playing chess on chess.com, I thought the option flipboard was like a comical way to resign, where you'd flip the table over in a rage, scattering animated chess pieces everywhere. For about a week, I played chess, waiting for that perfectly infuriating game deserving of a rage quit. When I finally got one where I'd blundered a couple pieces and been taught the hard way about en passant, I went to my options and tapped as angrily as I could on flipboard, only for the board to rotate 180 degrees and show me what my destruction looked like from my opponent's perspective. I still wish they let us flip tables to resign. Manhunt. God of War. Doom Eternal. This war of mine. It's not even that gory, and for the most part you aren't doing anything. It's just sad and brutal, and all these things happen in real life. I've had to put down the game after my kid DLC expansion adds child characters to the game, based on real accounts, got a little sick and the medicine is scarce. She got depressed and stopped eating. I can't handle that shit. My second time picking it up, I basically failed right off the bat and got unlucky, and a bunch of college students my age died. I'm sorry to all other posters, but the correct answer is Rimworld, with Dwarf Fortress is also an accepted answer. The Last of Us 2, I would say, is very uncomfortable gore. Far too fits violence gets under your nerves. particularly because it's so realistic and human. If you shoot, stab or melee someone, you feel the sickening crunch and the blood spatter, the makeshift melee weapon breaking in their face, the enemy screaming and crying in pain. It's the sound, the background score, the atmosphere and the grounded realism of the graphics that makes it so violent.